"Hey, what do you think you're doing here?" The officer's voice cut through the air, sharp and hostile, as people on the sidewalk froze. A woman stood tall, calm but unflinching, her skin glistening under the afternoon sun, her navy uniform catching the light. He didn't know who she was. He didn't care. To him, she was just another black woman he thought he could intimidate. But in seconds, that arrogance would backfire. Because this wasn't just any woman, this was someone trained to face the world's toughest battles. And today, the battle was standing right in front of him. What happens when a racist cop tries to break the wrong person? Her name was Lieutenant Maya Johnson, a decorated Navy SEAL, one of the very few black women to ever earn that title. To the outside world, she was a symbol of strength, discipline, and resilience. But to her family and close friends, Maya was still the same warm, grounded woman who loved Sunday dinners, morning runs, and mentoring young girls who dreamed big. On this particular day, she wasn't in combat gear or stepping off a helicopter in some far-off country. She was simply out in town, running errands, enjoying a rare moment of peace. To the strangers passing by, she was just another woman in uniform, standing tall and proud. But here's the thing, uniform or not, Maya knew her skin color carried weight. She had felt the stares before, the unspoken judgments, the whispered doubts. And though she had spent years proving herself in the toughest training the military had to offer, she could never quite silence the reality that for some people, none of it mattered. That afternoon, as the sun beat down and the streets buzzed with ordinary life, Maya was about to face a moment that would prove it again. Only this time, it wouldn't be whispered doubts or quiet stares. It would be loud, it would be public, and it would come from someone sworn to protect and serve. Maya had just stepped out of a small cafe, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, when she noticed a patrol car rolling slowly to the curb. At first, she thought nothing of it, until the officer inside locked eyes with her. His gaze wasn't casual, it lingered, sharp and sizing her up. Moments later, the screech of brakes echoed across the street. "Hey you," the cop barked, slamming the door of his cruiser. Heads turned, pedestrians paused. Maya felt the shift immediately, the air grew heavier, eyes followed, curiosity buzzing in the silence. The officer stormed closer, his hand resting on his holster. "What are you doing here? Show me some ID." Maya blinked, calm but firm. "Excuse me, I'm just walking. Is there a problem?" His lips curled into a smirk. "Don't play smart. People like you don't belong in places like this. Now let's see some identification." The words strung, not because she hadn't heard versions of them before, but because they came with the weight of a badge, spoken loudly enough for everyone around to hear. A small crowd started to form. Some people pulled out their phones, others whispered nervously. Maya's heartbeat thudded in her ears, but her training kept her steady. This wasn't combat, but it felt like a battlefield. She reached slowly into her pocket, pulling out her military ID. "I have nothing to hide," she said, her voice even. "I serve this country. You're speaking to a Navy SEAL." The officer snatched the card, glanced at it, and scoffed. "A Navy SEAL? You, don't insult me. What kind of game are you playing here?" The crowd murmured louder now. A young man recording muttered, "She's literally in uniform, man. What's wrong with you?" But the officer ignored it, his face reddening. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across Maya. "Don't think that uniform makes you untouchable. Around here, I decide who belongs." For a split second, Maya felt the weight of every unfair fight she'd faced, every sideways glance, every question about whether she earned her place. But this time, it wasn't behind closed doors. It was unfolding on a busy street, in front of strangers who were watching every second. And just when it seemed like the situation couldn't escalate further, the officer reached for his radio, muttering about backup. The tension crackled like static in the air. Maya stood frozen but unyielding, the crowd's eyes flicking between her and the cop. No one knew what would happen next, only that this confrontation was about to explode. The officer's radio crackled as he called for backup, his voice laced with authority he thought no one would question. The crowd stiffened. Some whispered nervously, others filmed with trembling hands, and Maya, standing in the middle of it all, felt the weight of every eye fixed on her. "Hands where I can see them," the cop barked, stepping closer. She raised her hands slowly, not out of fear, but out of discipline. Her uniform clung to her frame like a shield, but in that moment, it felt like a target. "You're under suspicion," he spat. "Don't make me put you on the ground." Maya's jaw tightened. Her voice cut through the tension, steady as steel. "I've fought enemies overseas with more respect than you've shown me right now." The crowd erupted in gasps. Someone shouted, "She's a Navy SEAL." But the officer didn't back down. He grabbed her arm hard, shoving her back a step. That was it, the moment everything boiled over. Phones shot higher into the air. Mothers pulled their children closer. Anger rippled through the onlookers, but so did fear, because they all knew how these stories often ended. Maya locked eyes with him, her voice carrying like a command, "Take your hand off me." And for a split second, the world seemed to freeze. The only sound was the officer's heavy breathing and the recording phones capturing every twitch of his jaw. But then, just as his grip tightened, the roar of another voice cut through the crowd. "Officer, that's enough." Everyone turned. A senior official, decorated uniform gleaming, pushed through the bystanders. Authority radiated from him, undeniable and commanding. The officer froze, his grip faltering, his arrogance slipping away under the weight of someone who actually outranked him. The street had turned into a stage, and the next words would decide everything. The decorated official stepped between Maya and the officer, his voice ringing with authority. "Do you realize who you just put your hands on? This woman has risked her life for this country, something you clearly know nothing about." The officer's face drained of color, his grip loosened, his arrogance crumbling under the weight of exposure. The crowd murmured louder, their phones capturing every second. In that instant, the power he thought he held vanished. Maya straightened her shoulders, her voice calm but unwavering. "My uniform shouldn't have been the only thing that demanded your respect. My humanity should have been enough." The crowd erupted in applause, some cheering, others wiping away tears. But Maya didn't smile, because she knew this wasn't just about her. Today she had the strength, the training, and the visibility to push back. But how many others weren't believed? How many others didn't have a crowd watching, cameras rolling, or someone powerful stepping in? That thought weighed heavier than any mission she had ever carried out overseas. As the officer was escorted away, Maya looked out at the faces in the crowd, black, white, young, old, and she saw something shift. Not just anger, not just relief, but recognition, a truth they could no longer ignore. And here's the truth. Racism doesn't vanish because someone wears a uniform, earns a title, or proves themselves 1,000 times over. It lives in the moments when power is abused, when prejudice is loud enough to humiliate, and when silence lets it thrive. So I'll ask you this. If you had been standing there that day, watching it all unfold, what would you have done? And more importantly, what will you do the next time you see it happen?